But what I remember the most is reading a book by A.W. Tozer, The Knowledge of the Holy, I believe it was. And I thought, when I picked up the book, I thought he was a Calvinist, because if I knew that he wasn't, I wouldn't have ever picked up the book. I'll be honest with you. I just wouldn't have had respect for him. And because John Piper was some kind of a hero of mine, and I really looked up to John Piper. Still do like John Piper a lot, by the way. Not through everything he's ever set out. R.C. Sproul the same way. I got his Ligonier tapes. I've still got a box of his Ligonier tapes in my garage. My wife's like, "Why do you keep these?" I don't know. I just don't like throwing stuff away. But I got his Ligonier tapes I think once a month or something like that, and I would play his Ligonier tapes. I loved listening to R.C. Sproul. Still get a lot from what he taught, and believe a lot of what he taught. And so I was reading this book by Tozer, and he said something that didn't fit my paradigm, my Calvinistic paradigm. And I thought to myself, I thought Tozer was a Calvinist. And so I get online and I start searching, and I find out that Tozer actually wasn't only that he wasn't a Calvinist, he actually spoke out against Calvinism. And he had sermons, online that I was able to find where he actually denounces Calvinism and puts it down, so to speak. And that really just put me in a kind of a tailspin, because I had just this huge amount of respect for Tozer, because he was a serious scholar. I mean, he was a serious preacher. He wasn't one of the namby-pamby guys, the health, wealth, and prosperity guys. He's an exegete of Scripture, and he was serious about the things of God. Because in my mind, at that young age, I'd kind of set up this dichotomy of either you were kind of the seeker-sensitive, health, wealth, and prosperity, maybe even, you meant well, but you're just trying to grow churches, you're more about entertainment, or you're a deep exegete and you're Calvinistic and you know the truth and you're willing to swallow the difficult, hard pill of election and predestination, and you're a serious scholar over here. And Tozer just kind of rocked that thought pattern for me for the first time. And then soon thereafter, I remember discovering C.S. Lewis, also same kind of thing. A huge respect for C.S. Lewis. It was quoted all the time by Piper and other leading Calvinists. And so I just kind of assumed he was a part of our camp. And when I found out neither one of those men were, it just kind of rocked my world in a way to say, how can they possibly reject Calvinism and be serious about the Bible? They must be stupid, or they must be, they must be trying to, run from the Scripture or something. There's something must be wrong with somebody who just doesn't accept the plain reading of Romans 9. I mean, it's right there. I mean, How in the world can you not accept it? And that was my mindset. I remember thinking that. And so I began, I had actually debated back in high school and college, and went to state several years. And so I had learned the kind of the skill of debate. And one of the things they forced you to do in debate was to be able to debate both sides of an issue equally well, because that makes you a better debater, because you're forced to take both the affirmative and the negative of any topic that we were going to state to debate. You had to, because sometimes you'd even walk into a room. We'd had there was a series with the cross-examination debate. You walked in the room, you didn't know whether you were affirmative or negative. They would tell you when you walked in.
Wow.
And so you had to be prepared on both sides. And so they drilled in you this ability to kind of to step away from one view and to step into another, which is a skill that's really hard to put down, a passionate view about something and take on the other side and do it just as well. It's a hard thing to do. But for me, it was kind of like I'm a debater. I like logic. I like thinking through concepts and things like that. And so I had never really done that with Calvinism. I'd never really looked at the other side. And so I just remember cognizantly thinking to myself, you know what, I'm gonna look at the other side of this issue. And so I just started, I found Arminius. The first thing, who better to go to than the source? And started looking up Arminius, and started reading his stuff. And I was shocked when I read Arminius for the first time, because he sounds like a Calvinist. He sounds more Calvinistic than a lot of Calvinists today do. I mean, just very, very high on the sovereignty and high on exegesis and high on the holiness of God and all of these things that I loved about my Calvinism camp. He had it all, and he was a deep thinker, and he had some really strong arguments and points that I had not really thought through at really any kind of depth at that time. And even when I would come across difficult arguments from Arminius or other Arminians that I didn't agree with at the time, I would still just think to myself, well, I'm nobody. I'm a little low Leighton Flowers. By that time, I had my master's, but I hadn't done any doctoral work. I haven't really studied, this very in depth. I don't know how to answer that argument from Arminius or from, that Arminian or that scholar or this person. But I know that Sproul could if he were here. I know MacArthur could if he were here. The big dog, they could, and that kind of placated my, my mind, so to speak, to say, I don't know how to answer that hard argument, but I bet you they would. And so, for some people, they would just leave it at that and just go, I'm okay with the mysteries of this, or not understanding how to answer that quandary or that problem. But I'm not that kind of a person. I'm kind of I have to find the answer, especially if I'm debating online and I want to be able to answer that guy who thinks he's got me. As a Calvinist, I want to have a good answer. And so I would start looking up those answers from Sproul or other leading Calvinistic scholars and just start looking for them. And the more I began to look into some of the answers, the more disheartened I became about Calvinism because their answers just weren't satisfying to me. They just seemed to be dodging. They seemed to be doing the very thing that I'd been accusing Arminians of doing all along, ignoring the verses or, running away from issues or, appealing to mystery every time. So, all these things I found the Calvinists doing it in response to some of these arguments that I was struggling with. And that just kind of put that little, that seed of doubt that maybe there's something wrong here with this way of thinking. And I began to just kind of step away from it. I haven't told this story everywhere, so you get a little bit insight of this one, Lucas, but
very good.
I logged into one of the boards where I debated. There was a lot of theology boards. Matter of fact, Derek Webb, Cabin's Call, who was a really strong Calvinist, he's now an atheist, unfortunately, and we've talked about that on our broadcast. But he had a web board, a message board for theology, and that was one of the boards that I participated on quite regularly. And there was another one, the Baptist board, where there was a bunch of Baptist, theologians debating, and there was 2 or 3 other boards that I would engage on occasionally, just kind of talking theology. I'm just a theology geek. I loved doing that. But I logged into one of those boards as a different name, and like Brother Bill or something. I don't remember the name I used, but just something, just something goofy. And and at first I got on there just making kind of the typical Arminian, arguments, just kind of seeing, and I was still a Calvinist at the time. Yeah. But I would just kind of like, I was doing what I'd learned in debate, try to debate from the other side, put yourself in their shoes. And at first I was just making kind of jokes. I was still a Calvinist. I was kind of making, the normal goofy thing jokes and stuff like that with little winky faces and all this stuff, just kind of making fun of Arminians in the sense. Again? Do what?
Can we find this chat again?
I doubt. I think that I know Derek Webb's stuff is all down, and I don't think any of these still are existent in there. It'd be fun to go back and look at them now, but I was just trying to kind of fill out this other side, and so I would, when I get these issues because I was reading all these books from Arminians and different non-Calvinistic scholars, and then I would come up with a good argument that I thought, oh, that's hard to answer. How would a Calvinist answer that? And so I would post it on there as Bill, and try to get an answer from all the Calvinists on there. And a lot of them were my friends. Like one of them was actually a close personal friend of mine was on those boards. And so he would debate with me, not knowing it was me. And so I'd have these discussions and I was going, now wait, that doesn't sound like an answer. Now it sounds like and some of them would like attack me personally and, just like call me names and all this stuff. And I was going, you're, and I was a Calvinist at the time. So it would kind of be like, why are you doing that? Why are you getting, and so it was a practice that I kind of went through that really forced me to try to defend the other side to the best of my ability. And in doing so, it really became more and more disillusioned with the Calvinists that I was engaging, to the point where I was just like, I don't like these guys anymore. So I really just didn't like those guys anymore. But I still was a Calvinist. And I just was like, well, I want to go find the serious Calvinists. These online guys don't know what they're doing. And so I just started digging into the Lorraine Bettners and Berkhoff and just all the guys I'd respected throughout the years as a Calvinist, I just began to kind of dig in their books to find answers to these problems that I was discovering and these issues I was discovering. And again, I didn't find anything that was satisfying to me, to the point where eventually, and I can't put a pinpoint like on the date or the time and when it happened, where I eventually just kind of said, I'm not a Calvinist anymore. I can't affirm these things. It was just kind of a slow process I went through of kind of deconverting from Calvinism.